Is weird, odd, strange, or just plain bizarre is really your cup of tea? Then, the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast will give you that fix. Can't believe it? Well, listen for yourself as we deliver the strangest news you definitely won't find on CNN or Fox. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Network. I'm your host, Emily Ferrier, here to bring you through my favorite weird news stories of the past few days. Starting us off this week, in Rimmersburg, Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania State Police in Clarion were called to Union School District on Baker Street on Friday for reports of a stolen juice box. They found that a known juvenile had stolen a juice box from the school cafeteria worth 80 cents. No word if it was returned. Oh yeah. I mean, that's a pretty stupid reason to call in the cops, no? Stolen juice box? A little bit much? A little much? No? Okay. I thought it was. Here's some more dumb ways, or dumb reasons that people have called the cops. Here's one. A little transcript here. I'd like to call and report a fire. Where is it located, sir? On a hillside just east of the city. Can you be more specific? Yes. And then he gave a detailed location. Oh God, it's getting bigger. The whole top of the hill is on fire now. Stay calm, sir. We're sending somebody out. It's getting bigger. Oh my God, doesn't anybody else see it? It's lighting up the sky around it. It's huge. Oh God, wait. Sir? I'm so sorry. I'm not usually out at this time of night. I just got off work late and, it's the sun. I'm so sorry for wasting your time. There's no fire. It's the sun rising. Never mind, I'm really embarrassed. That's fine, sir. We'll cancel the call. Thank you for calling. That's one dumb one. This person had another woman call in saying that her cat was stuck in a tree. I knew she wanted the fire department to come save the cat, so I got my "that's only in movies and TV" speech ready, and then she said, so my husband climbed up to get the cat out, and now he's stuck too. It's dumb. But also probably still need people for that. This person says, I'm quite pregnant. Don't exactly remember how far along, but definitely past 30 weeks. A woman calls to say, or a quite pregnant woman, calls to say that her doctor told her to refrain from having sex for the rest of the pregnancy, and she didn't understand why. I looked at her file, and I saw that she was having preterm contractions, so I explained that the sexual activity can cause contractions, so it's safer to abstain, so the baby could stay in as long as possible. And then she tearfully exclaims, but how will I feed the baby? I said, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? How will I feed the baby if I can't have sex? A patient was convinced that her baby was living off of her boyfriend's. Yes, and then it would starve if they stopped. I explained about the umbilical cord, but she refused to believe me until I asked her about single moms, lesbian mothers, etc. Asked how she thought their babies would feed and grow. After a moment of silence, she thanked me and started to hang up the phone, but not before I heard her screaming her boyfriend's name. The man had a good thing going for a while there. I honestly wasn't sure if I felt more sorry for him or a baby growing up in that household. Just after I got cut loose from training, I received a priority, meaning immediate response animal ordinance call. Usually this call is reserved for animals in traffic or other vicious animals where there is a potential for immediate threat to life. The reporting party was a parent attending school function. Caller advised there was a raccoon loose in the school. I dispatched 2 officers to the call, made it onto the scene. The officer then broadcast the suspect description via radio. Suspect is small, fast, and wearing a bandit mask. May have robbed a couple of trash cans. We lost him in a foot pursuit. Hilarious. Kids helpline. This isn't a cop, this is kids helpline. An 11-year-old boy thought he locked himself in a wardrobe while home alone. So I was on the phone with him for a while before I suggested sliding the door instead of pushing it out. I heard a few sniffles, and then a quiet, "Oh yeah, I forgot the door went like that." So cute. One woman called because she thought her house was being shot at. Turns out she forgot about her eggs boiling on the stove and they exploded. So sad. A woman dialed 911 to say that there were men in her house trying to take her away. The men in question were police officers who'd come to arrest her. So, don't call 911 on 911. Here's another transcript. 911, where do you need assistance? Drunk guy at the convenience store. This guy won't sell me beer. Oh, why not? I can't show my ID because I'm not 21. Without the ID, the clerk cannot sell you, especially if you're underage. But other clerks let me bribe them before. I told him that, and he still won't take my bribe to sell to me. Make him take my bribe. We will not force the clerk to accept your bribe, and definitely won't let him sell to a minor. Do you want me to wait here and have another officer come talk to you in person? Yeah, I'll sit outside and wait for you. Nice. Here's another one. The best story I have is a guy who called about a bobcat in front of the library. He called out of breath and said that there was a wild cat intimidating people so they could not enter or exit the building. It was in fairly close. So I started to run over. I asked if anyone was injured, and he said no. I was expecting a group of people held up at the entrance by a huge cat hissing at everyone. I told him to keep away from it and stay on the line. When I got there, I found a tabby cat perched on a bench. I verified the collar and the cat, and he called about. I went over to the cat with him, started to pet him, rolled him over, and let me scratch his belly. This guy was shocked and said, "Oh, someone else domesticated it." One guy called frantically, saying that he saw the dead body of a young woman, early 20s, wearing nothing but shorts. I gave a detailed description, hair color, skin color, body position, the whole bit, and said that she was by the side of the interstate. So we figured this had to be a really fresh crime scene. We started scrambling together officers to get there as soon as possible. Big hassle considering it's rush hour and they're all dealing with accidents and things. On top of that, we can't say what the issue is on the radio because we have too many busybodies who monitor police radios, then try to call and get juicy details or otherwise meddle. So we have to get these officers into their cars to read the computer, leaving other issues. And these are suburban cops in the Midwest. Murder is a damn big deal. The guy calls back a few minutes later and says, I checked again. It's a dead deer. Peeved, I announced on the radio, the trip is canceled. It was a dead deer. Another officer sarcastically calls back, with shorts on. Very funny stuff. I have a heck of a lot of these, and we have to take a break. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to keep going with these extremely silly 911 calls.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about some silly 911 dispatch calls, and we're going to get back into it because there were quite a lot of them. Okay. So this next one, 911. What's the address of the emergency? I need an ambulance. What's going on? I just need an ambulance. Can you tell me why? My dick is stuck in the wall. Okay. Please stay on the line for fire rescue. My uncle was a dispatcher in the suburb of Minneapolis, St. Paul. He would tell me stories whenever I saw him. My favorite goes like this. What's your emergency? Yes, I'd like to report two suspicious vehicles passing something back and forth in a park. Okay, we'll send an officer out to assess. Dispatch to car 45, two suspicious vehicles, passing items back and forth. Car 45 to dispatch, that's me, an officer, guy's name, passing Cheetos. 10-4. When the cops get ratted out. Of course, it was Cheetos. One of my personal favorites was when someone was called and I went like this. I know this is not an emergency, but there's a person in a giant monkey suit running downtown humping all the fire hydrants. I had to hold back laughing as best I could. Turns out he was right. When I sent the police down there, it was a kid in a monkey costume humping every hydrant he came across. Long story short, I helped a little girl do her math homework. That's hilarious. I was dispatched to a child being poisoned. Upon our arrival, we find a 14-year-old male and his mother. The mother was insisting to take him to the hospital so he could get his stomach pumped because he'd swallowed chewing gum. The child was looking at us as if to say, I'm sorry, my mother is crazy. A year later, same address, same family, called for poisoning. Upon arrival, we saw the kid and mother. The mother wanted to be taken to the hospital because the kid had admitted something to his mother, that he'd taken a hit of marijuana when he was visiting the week before. Kid had the same look on his face. I had someone call 911 to wish me a Merry Christmas when I was working at 3 a.m. on Christmas morning. That's kind of nice. I like that one. Another paramedic. Once I had a young woman call 911 around 2 a.m. saying that her legs were turning blue. Turns out she was wearing a new pair of blue jeans at the club that night. It's happened to us all, sweetheart, but none of us called 911 on it. A guy who called to swear out a complaint against his roommate because the guy stole his heroin. Yeah, they both got a ride. Someone called 911 about a machine gun mounted on a car. It was a Google Maps car. Another transcript. 911, what's the address of your emergency? Turtles in Georgia. Yes, ma'am. Turtles are an indigenous species of the state of Georgia. Really? Yes, ma'am. Huh. What do you do when there's one in your yard? Leave it alone. It's driving my dogs crazy. Is the turtle endangering your dogs? No. Are the dogs endangering the turtle? No, they're on the other side of the fence. Well, then just leave the turtle alone and he'll go along his merry turtle way. Amen. One time, a guy called 911 because he had multiple women in his bed and didn't know, and he that he didn't know and refused to leave. Oh my god. One woman called saying that every time she went outside, a frog said something obscene. A friend who used to be a police operator once told me that she had a hysterical call from a lady who was unintelligible but clearly distressed. They sent her an officer. Apparently she'd found a hedgehog in her garden and had no idea what it was. Assumed it was an alien or something and freaked out. That's very fun. A deer just swam across the river behind my house. Okay? I'm worried it might be cold. Well, there's nothing we can do about a deer being cold. Did it run off after swimming in the river? Yes. Well, ma'am, a wild animal is probably going to be fine. God, some people are so fun. Here's another transcript. What's your emergency? There's a rock on my lawn. A rock. Yes? Did you not hear me? There's a rock on my lawn. Someone did this on purpose. A rock on my lawn. I had to drive around it on my lawnmower. A rock. What's your address? You're 911 and you don't know my address? What are my taxes paying for? Useless. A rock. Sir, what's your name? Look at me on Google Earth. You can see me because there's a rock on my lawn. At this point, the map finally correlated with his location, and he was in the next county. I let them deal with it. I don't know how it turned out. I would like to know how that turned out. You know? My mom is a 911 operator, and she gets some insanely stupid calls. I remember a few years ago, there was a huge pileup involving several cars and fatalities. Clearly, it caused miles of traffic. A woman called 911 insisting that she get escorted out of the traffic by a trooper because she had to get home. It was ridiculous that she should be stuck like that. Like, people are dead, lady. You don't have to get home to watch Jeopardy. Got a call from a man that vandalized a snowman. I want to report an attempted murder. I asked them not to put mushrooms on my pizza. I'm allergic and they forgot. So that's attempted murder. On Christmas morning, 911 goes off. 911, what's your emergency? Breathless, panicky voice. How do I get the cranberry sauce out without it coming out in chunks? Open the other side. Open the other end and slide it out onto the plate. Oh, thank you. You're brilliant. I wasn't considered brilliant once I had to dispatch an officer over there to educate her on proper 911 usage. Merry Christmas. Here's your citation. And finally, entitled Rich Brat demanding an officer to drive her back home because she spent her travel money partying. She felt, since her father was a well-known surgeon and a higher taxpayer, she should get a break and get a ride. I told her no and hung up on her. Those are all very odd and silly, but it's not a joke. It's not a joke to, to call in to dispatch when you don't need to. They've got a lot going on. They're literally saving people's lives. So, stop wasting their time, will ya? Although I gotta say, wouldn't that be the most fun job? Being a dispatch officer? I mean, no, because, there'd be some intense stuff. But the funny stuff would be very funny. No? I don't know. Maybe that's just me. All right, when we come back from the break, a Florida boy sends his classmates to the hospital with a very silly mistake only a preteen can make. So we're gonna talk about what he did when we return from the break. So don't go anywhere if you want to find out what this kid brought to school. that probably ended up on the dispatch later on. So stay tuned for that. Don't go anywhere. All right.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back. When we left off, we were talking about some silly dispatch calls. And now, a Florida boy sent at least 40 of his classmates to the hospital when he mistook a can of pepper spray for body fragrance and sprayed himself with it at school. A student at Highlands Middle School in Jacksonville, Florida, caused the school's gymnasium to be evacuated after dispersing the spray last week, according to a Friday report. The boy had taken the pepper spray from the belongings of another student before deciding to help himself to a generous spritz, thinking it was body spray. The student who took the Castner actually sprayed himself as if he were applying body's fragrance product. Principal Evan Daniels said to the parents in a pre-recorded phone message, according to the outlet. The gymnasium was evacuated and ultimately 41 students were transported to hospitals for care. School faculty brought students outside a football field after the pepper spray was released. About half the students present ended up needing medical attention, and the students that were all treated were released from the hospitals on the same day as the incident. So it ended up being not too bad. Although authorities said the student suffered only minor injuries, the incident would be pretty traumatic, for those involved, you know? Outside, everyone started running out of the gym. Everyone was coughing and praying. Somebody threw up. It looked like blood. I called my mom, told her what happened. She handled the situation. I felt like a burning feeling in my chest and my throat. I was barely able to breathe and barely able to talk. The principal noted that in the call, while pepper spray is not illegal, it is prohibited by the rules of the school district. School officials plan to discipline the student who brought the spray to class. The student will face appropriate disciplinary consequences for bringing a prohibited item on campus, said Daniels. An investigation also resulted in consequences for the boy who snatched the canister. While this was obviously a major disruption, the investigation revealed that there was no intention to disrupt school and therefore no basis for more serious charges, Daniel said. The student who took the pepper spray was issued a juvenile civil citation. The school district also said they've tightened up security measures in response to the incident. Newsweek reached out to Duval County Public Schools for comment, but didn't receive response. I think the real story here is, why did a elementary school child feel the need to carry pepper spray on them? Realistically, it's a defense. It's a weapon of defense. It's not an offensive weapon, It's not something that, at least that's what I've always, So I'm not sure that they should be disciplining the child who brought it to school so heavily, because it's, that was, well, I don't know. I guess I'm not really at liberty to say, as I'm not a law enforcement officer. But personally, I'm a little shocked by that. Yeah. Also, it would be pretty shocking to be a child and be maced. It's not really what you expect when you're a small kid. Not really what you expect when you're a large kid either. I'd be pretty shocked to be caught in a pepper spray bubble, And one more little story about arrest. This is a nice little ironic arrest here. In Ashland, LA, a woman was arrested on drug charges after police determined the $5,000 cash she used to post an inmate's bail had a strong odor of marijuana. Authorities began investigating Stormy Lynn Parfit on Friday, shortly after she showed up in the jail to pay bond fee for an inmate being held on drug charges. The irony is beautiful. After catching a whiff of the cash, a detective searched her car while she was still in the jail and found nearly $40,000 more inside, along with 100 Klonopin pills, a food stamp card that wasn't registered to Parfit, according to the sheriff's statement. Investigators found hundreds of additional pills and cash, as well as marijuana, cocaine, and paraphernalia during a search of Parfit's home later. News outlets reported 4 unattained children were there and turned over to a relative. Parfit was charged with multiple counts of possession with intent to distribute drugs, 4 counts of illegal use of a controlled drug in the presence of persons under 17, taking contraband to a correctional institution, and other related charges, authorities said. Some people basically arrest themselves, That was a very fun one. You just turned yourself in, really, right? So when we return, I have a couple of very great stories of just that, of just people that, may as well have just walked in and turned themselves in. Would have saved a lot of time and resources. That's when we return from the break. So stay tuned.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about people who basically turned themselves in for the crazy crimes that they committed. Ooh, that was some nice alliteration. Look at that. And now, some more people that have done this. Let's see. When Stephen Crane broke into the Ravelli Republic in Montana newsroom, he used the computers to watch porn and check Facebook. Crane doused the office with a fire extinguisher, took some candy, and left. It wasn't difficult to find him. However, the police just followed the trail of stolen M&Ms that led to his sister's place across the way. Oh no. As two men waited in line at a coffee shop to pay their bill, a third cut in front of them. He threw a drink at the clerk and demanded all the money in the till. Temporarily surprised, the men quickly recovered and handcuffed the crook. Apparently in his rush, the criminal didn't even notice that they were police officers in full uniform. In Mesa, Arizona, home break-in was foiled when the burglar jumped through the bedroom window and got trapped in a clothes hamper. Cops took it from there. Recently, a woman in Fresno, California was stopped at a DUI checkpoint for being soused. Ever helpful, she offered up this: "My husband's right behind me, and he's even drunker than I am." Terrible. A German bank robber sent mocking emails to local police ridiculing their efforts to arrest him. First, he let them know that they had his age, build, and accent wrong. Then he corrected their announcement and said that he'd escaped on foot, but he had a getaway car. Cops got the last in, though, when they arrested him a few hours later, because they used his email to trace him. A woman in Somerset, Massachusetts, was arrested for breaking and entering. But she was quickly caught thanks to her ankle bracelet. Yeah, the one fitted with a GPS system that she'd gotten from police for being on prohibition from an earlier breaking and entering case. Love it. Gotta love it. Gotta love a silly criminal story. One of my faves. There's so many out there. We've talked about them a lot, and these are all new ones, so that's fun. Taking a big old left turn, a piece of a New Hampshire recycle bin was found on a beach in Ireland last weekend. Vinnie Highland made the discovery after a strong storm when he said he packed winds of 80 miles per hour, very high seas hit Ireland's west coast. when he said when he posted a photograph to the Hampton Beach Facebook page. That's some journey across the Atlantic, he said in the post. Hampton, New Hampshire. It's more than 2,800 miles away from the small cove in Derrynane, County Kerry in southwest Ireland, where it was found. Details of its journey, including the time spent in the water and the path, remain a mystery. But possibly rode along the Gulf Stream in the North Atlantic currents. Could have also floated out during an especially high tide at Hampton Beach in the recent past, but we'll never really know, will we? So here's other weird things that have washed up on the shore. Snowballs. This one's interesting. Thousands of snowballs appeared at a beach in Siberia in November 2016. The snowballs were formed by the wind and cold weather and appeared in an 11-mile stretch from the Russian coastlines in the Arctic Circle. It's kind of the first time that this has ever been seen being made, not by human hands, so that's very cool. Much like jellyfish, these blue glass sea creatures appeared in shores across the U.S. every 4 to 6 weeks. These organisms have flat, transparent float and triangular sail that allow the wind to guide them through the sea. However, when the wind picks up, they can find themselves on the way to shore. Sea glass creatures are completely harmless and appear by the thousands, making it quite the spectacle. Although this is a rare occurrence, may spark some concerns about their well-being. Events like this will not harm the species in any way. Much of the time, creatures from the sea wash up in the seashore, countless beaches. However, this time around, a fish scary enough to make you run away washed up in the shore of Mulolaba Beach. This frightening creature, which is known to live in some of the deepest parts of the sea, is a quite rare species, with sharp teeth and dark scales. It has warranted its name as the hellfish. We don't know why. Jellyfish, billions of blue jellyfish, which normally inhabit the open ocean, were found scattered across the beach shores of the west coast of the United States. They began first showing up in Oregon and Washington state beaches before beginning to appear off the coastline of California. They usually remain on the surface of the open ocean and ride the wind and water currents. Unfortunately, they got pushed in too far and were stranded on the beach. Seeing a piece of driftwood is quite normal occurrence on countless beaches, but this is taking things to a whole new level. This massive piece of driftwood washed up on the shores of La Push Beach in Washington, United States. The driftwood, due to its size, is called drift log. It can usually measure between 5 and 10 feet in diameter and over 100 feet tall. The cause of its appearing in beaches is usually due to strong winds, intense storms, etc. And it is quite an intense sight. Check that out. Definitely not something you see every day. Photo displays of random giant dye appearing on the shores of a local U.S. beach, and no one has any idea where it came from. Can't think of too many things that a dye that big would be needed for. Although, could be fun. Big game of Yahtzee that Poseidon was playing. I don't know. Spinal columns, like vertebrae from whales, are often found on beaches, but this one measured 6 feet long. Bones are found on the beach, sometimes taken for a closer look in museums, etc. We have tons more, so we're going to hear about them when we come back from the break, because we got to take a break. So stick around for more
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about weird things that have washed up on the shore and mostly U.S. beaches. One was in Ireland, but that was the first story that we launched into this with. Now, a giant squid, along with whales and other sea life creatures, a giant squid found its way onto the shores of New Zealand. Oh, there we go. 3 brothers were set to ride some waves in local Wellington Beach before they realized the 4.2-meter-long giant squid washed up on the shore. New Zealand Department of Conservation was immediately notified and recognized the creature indeed as a giant squid. This is quite a common occurrence in both New Zealand and worldwide, where bodies wash up on the shore relatively regularly. Perfectly preserved pufferfish skeleton. There's another nice alliteration. Was found on the shores of Wellington Beach in New Zealand. This Kiwi country finds himself quite a home to a lot of beach surprises, adding a fish skeleton to the list. Strong tides can easily wash fish and sea creatures onto the beach, leaving them with an unfortunate fate. However, this one, perfectly intact, quite an interesting discovery. Here's one that makes you think, how is this possible? This past summer, a massive barge appeared on the shores of St. Pete Beach, Florida. The barge measured nearly 40 tons, 200 feet long, 40 feet wide, and 8 feet tall. Vacationers at St. Pete Beach have never seen anything like this before. It's pretty shocking. Look it up. Sharks found themselves washed up on the shore numerous times in the past. However, this is a first. A shark head. Local and sea life specialists had no idea how the severed shark head, managed to find its way to the beach, and more importantly, where the rest of the shark was. It's at the top of the food chain. Here's one. The stuffed Elmo. Stuffed Elmo was washed up on a beach, missing an eye, visibly wet and dirty from a treacherous trip through the ocean. This one may not actually be as shocking, but airplanes have been discovered on shore. Many remain unrecognized, while others have been deemed product of a crash, emergency water landing, or remnants of warplanes from the past. One aircraft in particular, the United States Army Air Force fighter, crashed into the Guindanad coast during World War II, was discovered nearly 60 years later on the shore of a Welsh beach. That'd be shocking, wouldn't it? Sea pickles find themselves washing up on beaches. These sea pickles invaded beaches across the globe and are a type of free-floating colony of hundreds and thousands of tiny multicellular animals called zooids. The pickles actually fed on plankton by filtering several liters of water per hour, although they remain mostly in the ocean. They can wash up on shore at times when the tide starts to roll in. They may resemble a pickle, but I don't suggest eating them. As if fish, ships, and giant squids weren't bizarre enough, an entire dinosaur thigh bone washed up on a Washington beach. A fragmented femur bone hidden underwater for millions of years was the first evidence that dinosaurs once roamed in Washington. Scientists further look at the massive bone structure, identifying it as a theropod, which resembled beasts such as the T-Rex and Velociraptor. The fossil, which is estimated to be 80 million years old, marks a huge discovery and feat for prehistoric life. Robot hand. This isn't something you would come across in your casual day at the beach. A robotic hand was discovered this year on a beach near Great Kills Park Beach, New York, making Westworld a reality. Although where it came from remains unknown, we only imagine it will be the impending robot takeover. So, that's scary. Lego bricks. A container filled with millions of Lego pieces fell into the sea off Cornwall, UK in 1997. And they're still washing up on the Cornish beaches to this very day. The container, which was being shipped from Tokyo, was hit by a wave that tilted the ship up 60 degrees one way and 40 degrees back, causing the container to spill over. Container holding 4.8 million pieces of Lego, bound for New York, never made it. And it's been appearing on British soil 20 years later. A rusty Harley-Davidson motorbike washed up on the coast of British Columbia, Canada, which was believed to have been swept into the Pacific by a Japanese tsunami in 2012. The motorbike is believed to originate from Miyagi, northern Japan, before being swept into the ocean, making its way to Canada. With over 1.5 million tons of debris entering the waters from the tsunami, the Harley-Davidson managed to survive its entire trip to North America. So it's impressive. Very impressive. Giant eyeball ended up being washed onto the shore of Pompano Beach, estimated to be the size of a softball. Many believe the eyeball is from a squid, giant fish, or whale. However, genetic testing is required to determine exactly where it came from. World War II love letters. Countless beaches across Europe have stumbled upon love letters from soldiers in World War II, many destined from the United States and European countries to reach out to loved ones. Most likely the cause of storms at sea, causing the containers to lose their letters. And finally, the rubber duck. A container carrying a massive amount of 28,000 rubber ducks was lost at sea nearly 25 years ago. However, its contents are still washing ashore around the globe today. The shipment from Hong Kong has since been found at beaches in countless countries from Canada, United States, Ecuador, Colombia, England, and France. If you come across a rubber duck, maybe from 25 years ago. So that is thrilling. When we come back, because it was just International Women's Day, we're going to talk about that. This is a little bit of a hard turn from what we've been talking to up till this point. So prepare yourself for that, because it's happening whether you want it to or not. Okay? This is important. And I want to talk about it. So we're going to talk about it. Happy International Women's Day, everyone. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. All right, when we left off, we were talking about the weird things, right? That's what we were doing. We were talking about the weird things that had washed up on shore over the years. So, you know, if you see a rubber duck, you know, that could be it. Anyway, it was International Women's Day on the weekend, March 8th, International Women's Day. Love it, love it, love it. Best day, best day, best day. So, here we go. For 11 days in September 1995, some 50,000 activists and advocates from around the world leaders met in Beijing for the 4th Global Conference on Women. They outlined the biggest obstacles to gender equality, like poverty, healthcare, education, and then laid out a path to overcome them. Together, they reaffirmed their commitment to ensuring that women and girls' rights are inalienable, integral, indivisible part of human rights and fundamental freedoms. Jackie Nepal, Executive Director of the Canadian Research Institute for the Advancement of Women, was just a teenager at the time, but remembers her predecessors talking about Beijing, its declaration and platform for action, and what it's like to be among the tens of thousands of women from around the world. Wish I was there, Nepal says. It was just a positive feeling at the time that it was going to be a shift, that it might lead to something. While Nepal retains her sense of optimism, what keeps any women's activists going on is this sense of optimism that change is possible. This was one of the several organizations that helped the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives that produced Unfinished Business, a 2019 report looking at Canada's implementation of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. Canada was one of 189 countries to sign onto the declaration, but 25 years after Beijing, the report paints a less than rosy picture of progress. We're still really advocating the same things, Naples says. Among the key priorities outlined in Beijing were health, poverty, women in power and decision-making, as well as education and training and violence against women. When it comes to how much Canada has moved the needle of the issues, it's a mixed bag, says Andrea Gunraj, Vice President of Public Engagement for the Canadian Women's Foundation. Progress has been uneven for women who are Indigenous, women who are radicalized, women with disabilities who are in the North and experiencing poverty. We have to look at it from all perspectives. Earlier this week, Equal Measures 2030 released a report looking at 5 indicators of gender. Slightly less than 90% of women have said they have access to the contraception and family planning they need, but nothing Canada has done has addressed the lack of access for the remaining 10%. You might be wondering, why is this a weird news story? what it is that this was a breaking headline, and I thought it was ridiculous, is that Canadian women are on track to reach gender equality in 164 years. So if you were wondering, hey, why is this weird news? That's why. That is why. All right? That's not okay. Anyway, I was disappointed to see overall how flat the curve was. We'd like to see those lines really going upward much more quickly. For Canada, it's a fairly positive story, but there's still lots more to do. Napoli isn't a big fan of Canada comparing itself to countries performing much more poorly, or the it could be worse mentality. We keep the bar low by focusing on it that way. We should always be aspiring, especially if we espouse these politics, to reach higher and keep the bar high. This year, the Beijing conference, Canada ranked first on the UN's Gender Equality Index. It dropped by 25th. It dropped to 25th by 2015, and then rose to 13th as of 2018. While there's been considerable progress during that time, it's incredibly uneven. A woman is killed every other day in part of Canada. Once a week, a woman is murdered by her partner, and 1 in 3 women will experience some form of sexual violence over the course of their lives. Nearly half of women who are victims of a violent crime are women with disabilities. And while violent crime in general has dropped in Canada, sexual assault is one of the most violent crimes. It still continues to buck the trend. In conclusion to this story, young girls will not see the equality in their lifetime if we let this continue at a glacial pace. At this rate, it'll take us 164 years to close the gap. The closer women to get to closing the gap, it seems that the greater barriers to achieving gender equality. So that's some weird news, guys. That's weird. We got to step that up. All right? Happy International Women's Day. It's time to make change. Okay? Let's make it happen. 2020, year of change. Let's go. Let's do it. And on that note, thank you for listening to the Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. And please follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. Thank you for listening, and have a great night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.